ahead.
It's a man. All right, together. Give me a little feedback. What was some of your conversations like about this story in your group? What are some takeaways from your discussion? Right.
This is typical of me, right? So the first question is, so why did God pick this prophet? I don't know if he was a prophet. I guess he was a prophet. Why did he pick him?
To be a prophet or to marry Gomer, or both?
Through this.
Well, that's the question.
So that's, for me, that's a problem. The problem is that if you expected the main theme to get out to the Israelites as a whole, and there's no internet and there's no TV,
Only gossip.
newspaper, no telephone, here's got one man in one place, and you put him through this, how would you expect this beautiful theme of, even though you're so incredibly bad and you've been bad for a long time, I still love you this much. God, of course, knows it's all going to work, but I mean, for me, I don't see how that actually happens.
Let me try to paraphrase what I think I heard you say. It doesn't seem like a very good platform from which to launch a prophetic ministry saying, come back to me, I love you, come back to me. On the other hand,
it does to me.
Your wife, the therapist, you the lawyer. You the lawyer see a challenging situation, and the therapist has optimism.
I think Hosea was well known. So he was well known and respected, and people knew his story. And even today, it's a powerful story for us. So I think that God was right, that it was extremely effective back then. And I think it's extremely effective today to hear. I heard a sermon by Timothy Keller.
Oh, yeah.
I heard a sermon on this from Timothy Keller that just made me weep.
Wish I'd known about it.
Absolutely.
Look at it this afternoon.
Sermon about it.
Let me read it from the paraphrasing pen of Jack Blanco, the Clear Word Bible. When the Lord first spoke to Israel through Hosea, he said to him, go and marry the girl you say you're in love with. But she has an adulterous character like her relatives, and her children will be like her. She will be unfaithful and commit adultery as my people commit spiritual adultery against me. So Hosea married Gomer, and she conceived and bore a son. I help any. Here's what I caught my eye. Go ahead and marry the girl you say you're in love with. Well, she was any I'll catch you over. Any of you had your 20-year-old son or daughter come to you and say, I want to marry X, and you say, oh. Really want to do that? Go ahead.
No, but obviously she had to be good looking. I mean,
yeah,
he was not beyond grasping that aspect. I don't know, given what Rex said, which is there's no TV, no anything electronic that we have, what better way to spread the word, the idea that God loves Israel so much if they'll come back, even though they are prostituting themselves with Baal and so forth, that he would take them back. I mean, that news spreads pretty fast.
Okay. What about this second question? You know, you've heard me talk about it almost innumerable times. Maxwell, I've actually got a quote from him at the very end. We go through the 66, the Bible in his class, and say, what picture of God did I get from this book of the Bible? So if we ask ourselves that question this morning about the book of Hosea, what would your answer be?
That his love is unconditional.
Okay.
It's limitless.
Limitless, unconditional.
Amazing.
Amazing. There you go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. All righty, Fiona, I'm pointing at you. You must have uttered something out loud that was, they thought was,
It's very different from what I see.
okay, Fiona, how would it?
It reminds me that God will sometimes ask us to do what seems to be impossible.
Oh,
He will sometimes ask us to do that thing that in our minds might seem completely wrong. But he reminds us also that he is there to take us through it. He is with us on the journey. And then if we fall along the way, he is there to help to pick us up.
maybe one or two more, then we'll move on. Go ahead.
Wondering if God was trying to mature Hosea to a different person. Some time ago, John Voight, the actor who was Angelina's,
Mhm.
he went through a really tough time in his life. He didn't say the details, and he found himself face down on the floor and saying, "Why does it have to be so difficult?" He wasn't religious, and he says, "I have no question." God spoke to me. He said, "It has to be difficult." He said, "That's all I heard." He says, "It made me feel that I'm not alone." He's become quite spiritual. So
I read it too.
evidently it had to be difficult for John. What if it had to be difficult for Hosea's sake?
Mhm. The other side of the coin, yeah.
I think when, speaking of Gomer, I think when you're like Gomer, and you've done so many bad things and betrayal, that you carry so much guilt and self-hatred that it's hard for you to see that God would ever love you. Because it's hard to believe God loves you when you're not Gomer and you're struggling and trying. But imagine when you messed up that many times, and I think this story would be really helpful for particularly people with a lot of self-hatred.
Sure, typical lady of the night. Every time I hear the name Gomer, how many of you have ever read the book, The House of God? It's not a spiritual book. The House of God. It's a story written by a psychiatrist who did his first year of post-medical school residency in internal medicine at a hospital in Boston. And they had this saying, "Oh, it's another Gomer. Get out of my emergency room." So every time I hear Gomer, I think of that. It has nothing to do with the lesson, but it just popped. How about this? Some commentators believe that this really happened. And Hosea is only telling a very vivid story, a real story. They think it never, wait a second, I'm getting lost here. Never happened. They think it could never happen because God would never have a prophet marry a prostitute. Totally illogical. But one of the commentators rightly observes, if Hosea's story cannot be real, just because God would not ask a man to marry an unfaithful woman, and neither is the story of salvation, because that's precisely what Christ did for us, or has done for us. Most expositors of the past and of modern times have difficulties with the thought that Holy God would have should have given the order to one of his servants, particularly a prophet, to marry a woman living in sin. Many Jews therefore consider this report not as an actual fact, but as a symbolic representation. It's an allegory. Others may see a revelation of Jehovah to Hosea in which Israel's attitude towards God is expressed in a parable only. But it's not necessary to interpret the text in this manner. Another possibility would be that the word prostitute or wife of whoredom, I think that's the King James, indicates anticipating what Gomer would do after the marriage. On the other hand, the way expression may also be understood that Gomer led an immoral life already before getting married, and this would be quite understandable considering the decline of the people of Israel. There is yet another example in the Old Testament of an Israelite marrying a prostitute. Can you think of what it was? This is a quiz question. An Israelite prominent, well, I don't know if the Israelite was prominent, but it's
Rahab.
bingo.
Also, I'm thinking too about what Jesus said, I think in Matthew, when he was asked about divorce. And he said, if you're a godly woman and you're married to someone that is not, that you should stay with them and maybe you would save them. But if they leave you, you're free. So maybe this could even have been, if, we're told that God would die for one person. So, it was the salvation for Rahab. I mean, for Gomer, eventually.
Ma'am, the lady in the Pathfinder uniform, your cell phone camera pointing right in my eyes. No, that's okay. It's just. You realize it was on. Quite right. It's just distracting. Let's talk a little bit about the book for just a second, because we're going to spend 2 weeks on it. It was thought to have been written in the last days of the Northern Kingdom. It says in verse 1, it lists 4 kings of Judah and 1 king of Israel, even though there were more kings in Israel during the time that Hosea lived and prophesied. And Judah was considered to be a little more righteous. I'll use the word righteous, can't think of a better one, because every other king was at least a good one. 100% of the kings on the Israel side were bad. Led the people, Jeroboam the first led the people into idol worship, and it never ever stopped. And Jeroboam the second was just as bad. And some people consider this God's Laodicean message to the people in Israel in an attempt to stop their national apostasy. God sent a personal, emotion-packed message calling them for them to change their course. We got to remember this. There's at least 2 audiences for this message, right? The audience then and the audience today. And Hosea presents this message using 2 different communication types. Did you notice that when you read this? Chapter 1 is written in prose. Chapter 2 is written in poetry. Chapter 3 is written in prose, and then the rest of the book 4 through the end is poetry again. So it's a different styles. Let's see. Hosea's wife Gomer was unfaithful to him as Israel was unfaithful to God. This put Hosea in God's position. God asked Hosea to manifest steadfast love in his family situation so that he, Hosea, as we, us, may perhaps begin to understand how much God feels. God must feel when his people sin. So we're going to do just a quick buzz over and then some more discussion questions. So we've talked about this. Notice the names of the children: Judgment, No Love, and Not My People. Hey, not my people, come in, it's time for supper. I don't know if you noticed this, but only the first child in this story is mentioned as explicitly as the son of, is the product of their marriage. Next 2, it says second one, she became pregnant and had a child, and as she was weaning the child off the breast, I know that helps inhibit pregnancy when you're breastfeeding, but when soon the third one came along, oops, I bounced it, didn't I? To that. The name Lo-Ruhamah means no mercy. The fact that God had no mercy for Israel and had mercy towards Judah, at least some, shows that it doesn't really matter if Judah was more worthy of mercy than Israel, because by its very nature, mercy is mercy. It's like unmerited favor, right? Therefore, it's within the wise and loving heart of God to show mercy to whom he chooses to show mercy to. And then the next one, it's not my people. Perhaps the appearance of a child made this evident. Oh, perhaps this son really was not the son of Hosea. The name not my people. Maybe this kid was a red-haired boy, and Hosea had dark brown hair. And where'd that come from? Because it was a child of another man. Perhaps the appearance made that evidence. The message God had delivered to Israel through Hosea was hard enough, but God also made Hosea have to actually live the message. Not only give the message, but live the message. One day Israel will return to God. We'll come to that in a minute, and once again be the sons of the living God. You're not my people and I will not be your God. This was not so much a sentence or a penalty as it was a statement of a fact. The people of Israel rejected God, and here the Lord simply recognized that fact. He would not play, let's pretend. You pretend to be my people and I will pretend to be your God. The time for those games was over. So here's another discussion question. How do the names of Hosea's children reflect Israel's spiritual state? Judgment, mercy, mercy less, without mercy. Judgment without mercy, not my people. I mean, those are the English renderings of the Hebrew names.
Prophetic.
Prophetic. Prophetic. Very much so. Good point. Anything else? Chapter 2. Israel is compared to an unfaithful wife. Read just a few verses out of that chapter. So, quick word. God speaks of consequences, but almost also promises to win her back or lure her back. No, restore the relationship and renew the covenant. I'm going to read again from the Clear Word Bible, starting with verse 18. No, 19. Or try 14. I will strip her of all her luxuries and take her back to the desert so she will sense her need of me. There I will win her back with kindness and words of love. This part isn't on the screen. Then I will bring her home and give her back her vineyards. I will turn her disgrace into a door of hope, as I did for Joshua in the valley of Jezreel. She will respond to my kindness with singing, as she did in the days of her youth, when she first came out of Israel. Are you talking about Gomer here? And she will again call me her beloved husband, and will not call me her taskmaster. I will take the names of Baal from her lips, and she will not speak of her gods again. In verse 19, which is on the screen, I will take Israel back as my wife. I will shower her with mercy and love. She will become mine forever. I will not turn away from her again, and she will again accept me as the Lord. It's a nice prophecy. Please.
My memory is kind of poor on details. Do you know how long after this, what the 10 tribes were destroyed and taken over? I mean, this
In 3 to 5 years.
judgment. When did it? How many years?
In 3 to 5 years.
That wasn't much, was it?
That was my understanding.
The last call,
It
yeah.
wasn't like 30 years later. So many prophecies are happened 30 years later. This was like relatively immediate.
That's significant.
Yes, it is, isn't it? So they were taken captive by the Assyrians, and the races were intermixed, and they became half Jewish, half other races, and they were known as, in Jesus' time, as the what? Americans. All right. With great anticipation, God looked forward to the day when his relationship would be genuinely restored with his people. He wanted an intimate love relationship with his people, Israel, and longed for the day when they would have a marriage-like love and commitment to God. He was not satisfied with a fear-based, obedience-focused relationship with his people, where they thought of him primarily as their master. He wanted a relationship where they thought of him primarily as their husband. Hosea 3. Hosea buys Gomer back, illustrating God's enduring love and redemption for Israel. And it ends with a prophecy of Israel's return to God and David the Messiah. Chapter 3 is only 5 verses, so I'm going to read it. The Lord spoke to me again, saying, go and find your wife and tell her that you still love her, even though she has left you and has had many lovers. Show her that you love her just as I love the people of Israel, even though they have gone after fertility gods and sit in front of them eating the delicate raisin cakes they baked for them. So I went and found my wife working as a prostitute. I paid the man she worked for 15 pieces of silver and 10 bushels of barley and bought her back, his own wife. Then I told her that I was willing to wait many days to see if she would leave me to play the harlot that she had done the first time. Or if she would want me as her husband again. So he bought her back, and then there was this period of celibacy. That's right. In the same way, the people of Israel will have to go many days without a king, without the holy vest of the high priest. So this would be like after coming back from captivity. Without the vest, the holy vest of the high priest, without gods and sacred pillars where they like to go for answers. After many days, the people of Israel will return and seek the Lord with all their hearts. In their last days, they will turn to the descendant of David. That's who? Zion. In the last days, they will turn to the descendant of David as their rightful king. They will respect the Lord their God and come to him in awe, seeking his goodness, and he will bless them. That's kind of how this story portion, that's our lesson today.
One more place.
Please.
We're talking too much.
Your wife will give you an elbow when you do.
That's what's happening. Okay. She was going to sleep on me. So he bought her back. And since this is a judgment on Israel and so forth. Israel, Adventist theologians, the 7 times 70 weeks are determined upon my people. And they place that beginning in 457 BC and ending with the stoning of Stephen, 3.5 years after the death of Christ. The death of Christ was the penalty paid. They still had 3 more years to see if Israel would accept and really come back to God. So I'm wondering if there's a parallel there where they paid the price, hoping that it would impact to be a real life. Similar to the Israel was, as Jesus said in the temple before he died, your house is left desolate, so forth. So he dies, but he still gives them 3.5 more years before he says, okay, I'm really done with the nation as a prophetic symbol.
What do you think? I got a thought on that. My answer is it certainly could be. Yeah, probably is. This is the last of these long quotes here. This was interesting, though. This is kind of an allegory again for chapter 3. It says 2 on the bottom, but it's 3. When Hosea provided for Gomer, she spent it on her adulterous lovers. It's as if Hosea went to the house of Gomer's lover, where she lived apart from her husband in adultery. He knew that this scoundrel of a man couldn't provide for his wife and that she lived in poverty and rags. Hosea knocked at the door. He spoke to the man who answered and said, "Are you the man living with Gomer?" The guy obviously said, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I'm Hosea, her husband. I brought these groceries and money so she can be provided for." When Hosea left, Gomer and her lover must have thought he was a fool. What a great dinner they had together with the food that Hosea brought. But this is how the Lord loves us, lavishing blessings on us even when we are worshiping idols, providing us with blessings we waste on other gods. All right, I have 4 questions on this slide. Hopefully we'll spend the rest of the time here, week at a time. In what ways do we, members of the Grace and Truth Sabbath School class, Seventh Day Adventist Christians living the year 2025, what ways do we chase other lovers or idols today? I'm not looking for a confession.
There's so many ways that people do it at work, with their careers. This is
Put their career first.
this is what I'm striving for as the next promotion, money, whatever.
Matter of priorities. Okay. Anyone else? Sports?
Yeah, go to a football game.
Oh,
Ouch.
Yeah.
I was a proud sports fan up until 5 years ago.
Your team's lost.
Patriots let Tom Brady go.
No.
Terrible mistake. Any other thoughts? Ways in which, sports, you can spend way too much time watching sports and neglect absolutely.
Even relationships.
Relationships. Personal relationships.
Watching TikToks.
TikTok? Is that what you said? TikTok? or anything. Pick up my iPhone just to check the news, and the next thing I know, a half an hour is gone by. What the hell did I do in this half hour? Nothing of value. You know, anything else?
Possessions, just
Oh, sure. New sports car, new home, new whatever. Yeah, possessions. Those are definitely idols. Good. What way do you imagine? What do you imagine Hosea felt when he had to pay to buy back his own wife? She was working for a pimp. The suggestion is here. I handle yes.
Parallel with he paid wife get back to him. Parallel with the God, Jesus pays with blood, bring his people back.
Mhm.
And that's the way it's a parallel you look at it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Si,
Lauren, I was just trying to reverse question one and ask it, in what ways do we show love? Instead of saying, in what ways do we chase after other lovers? So much of our time is spent resisting, not doing. But what do we do positively that really shows our love for God?
okay, that's a nice way to flip the narrative of the question. Sure. Anybody got any response to Si's question? Something you just think about in your mind for a second.
Not much.
Yeah.
Honest truth, for most of us, probably not much. Life is hectic and we get wrapped up in it. I wake up and I'm retired. I don't have a calendar hardly. I wake up in the morning, I'm going to do devotional reading, then I get up my iPhone to check the news. And it's time for a coaching client. Damn, my day is gone. It's easy to do that. Now, this is not come up to the altar and confess time, but you may want to think about this one in your own mind. There might be someone who might want to share a little testimony, but what have you experienced God's discipline and restoration? And if so, what have you learned from that experience? Anyone? Very personal question, so if nobody wants to speak, that's fine.
Going back to John Vogt.
Mhm.
I don't know what his current life is, although he does seem to be more spiritual. Why does it have to be so difficult? Because it has to be. Sometimes when it's difficult, oftentimes, and one survives it, there's a different perspective on priorities that comes through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thought that went through my head was it might be easier for someone who was living a non-spiritual, non-Christian life and found the Lord through the assurance of salvation that was presented through by faith, through grace, chose to align with God, and then would look back and say,
Yes to that is one who goes through a Gomer experience might question why God, whatever, I'm upset with God, whatever. But I like Paul's answer. All the stuff he went through. He finally, at the end, he says, I have not given up my faith. He didn't say, I believe God is great and I have a wonderful life. He simply said, through all of this, I haven't given it up.
all the stoning, beatings.
So hanging on.
Mhm.
I'd answer questions. Still.
You know, at Rinson last week, there were people that couldn't move, I guess, from the scene of the crucifixion because they just couldn't. They had never really realized until they saw it what
Presented in graphic.
presented
Yeah.
that Jesus would do that for them. And you could see it in the resurrection scene too, from where I was. And yeah,
That was worth all the hundreds of hours of setting it up when
it's
have people experience that. That's the whole purpose really of Risen.
how people's lives get changed that just never, and for everybody, I mean, like we were saying earlier, none of us really have a grasp on the truth of God. just, you can't really grasp it as humans because we obviously are not capable of.
It's the closest thing we probably get to that is our own children.
Children.
Arthur, and then Brian.
I think the story is really about relationships.
Mhm.
And it's, relationships that are transactional or non-transactional. God's relationship here is one of being non-transaction. In other words, he says,
You be good and I do this.
I will continue to be to you what I should be, despite you not being what you should be to me.
Nice put, yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the best kind of relationship, and that's the relationship he expects of us, right? Gomer's relationship with the profession of prostitution is a transactional relationship. That relationship doesn't last.
Right.
So
Beautiful.
it's really about, it's a good story. It's a story about his relationship, and it's a relationship or a promise he makes to Abraham. When he appeared to Abraham as a burning fire, the fire pot, and God makes a walk, right? And Abraham is expected to make the walk. But he's surprised that God does not call him to make the walk. And basically, what God is saying, look, I will make the promise for both of us, right? I will do what it takes. That's on the cross. And you don't have to, because I'm going to do it for you. All you have to do is to trust me, believe in me, have faith in what I am.
Thank you. That's great. Bracken, this gentleman, and then Elmer. Bracken.
Isn't the central theme of every one of the prophets for Hosea, the theme of you're doing wrong, you're going to be punished if you continue, but I will forgive you if you turn back to me. So that's the theme for all the prophets.
What's different about this?
So here's another prophet who's saying the same thing. And this is a God who knows the future. And he knows that all of these people have free will.
Mhm.
And he knows that he's been hammering the theme for centuries.
Mhm.
And even this group who hear Hosea are not going to turn back to him and are going to be punished with diaspora and scattered. And it's the theme that is forever. The theme forever.
Right. What makes this one as real as it can get?
Because it's so fundamental in human nature of being painted in terms of a marital relationship.
An adulterous marital relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your first name?
Sula.
Okay.
I've often wondered about Gomer, the life of Gomer, right? I mean, like, how did she get there? Number one. Number two, was this something that, she really wanted to do all the time, or just found herself in situations where she was addicted and had some regrets in the moments and then wanted to do better? Or was it just somewhat, oblivious to the realities of morality?
Well, we just read the story, so what we know is what we read there. It's easy to think that it could be any number of those things you mentioned. Sexual addictions are just as compelling as drug addictions, or can be. So maybe she just couldn't let it go. It must have been beautiful, as Breck said, because I like the way Blanco put it, his version. God told him to go ahead and marry the woman you love. You're in love with her because she's so beautiful. Go ahead. Elmer.
So looking at the emotion, what Hosea must have felt knocking on the door to feed his wife living in that condition, how the pain of it. Barbara and I have to confess, Barbara and I went and saw the most recent chapters of the chosen. And it depicts the pain that Jesus had in the Garden of Gethsemane, which is a whole different level of pain from what Hosea experienced. And then I think of the pain that must have been felt by God the Father. Many of us are parents. What if we knew we were putting our children not just in harm's way, but to die, and to die in a horrible way? So these are extremes. These are emotions that I don't think humanly we're capable of really grasping. This is as close as we come, the Hosea thing. Does it come near the pain that Jesus felt, separation from God the Father? Does it come near the pain that God the Father had, knowing he is giving his son to die in such a cruel manner? I don't think it approaches that. And so that's what I see.
Question number 4. I heard Bill Crofton preach a sermon some years ago on this one. And he came at it from the reverse question number 2. He came at it from Gomer's perspective about how, here she was fortunate to marry somebody as prominent as and good as Hosea, but happy at first, self-sabotaging to the point where he has to, buy her back. How must she have felt? And then turn that around. How does that view our sense of being forgiven and being redeemed? Because we're not necessarily in Jesus' spot, we're in her spot, and Jesus has redeemed us, not the other way around.
How'd you experience that sermon yourself?
How did you? I don't.
Did it make an impression?
Yeah, it did, because it's like I never really thought of it that way before. It's like we're in her shoes. And God
It's
is
not Hosea in this story.
Yeah.
It's one more than.
Off of that point, I was gonna say something similar. It's we sort of think of forgiveness, there's a saying like forgiveness is for yourself. And this story sort of shows differently. Forgiveness isn't for us, it's for the person being forgiven. What does God get out of forgiving us?
What do you think?
Another question.
You're asking a question, not giving me an answer. Not giving your fellow classmates an answer. Let's jump down about a third of the way in this where it says his people. His people were as unfaithful as a prostitute was. In this vivid picture, we see how our idolatry, and we meant work, career, money, success, fame, how our idolatry and rejection of the Lord feels to God. When we put anything in front of the Lord, it hurts him like unfaithfulness hurts the victim of an adulterous marriage. By commending Hosea to take a wife of harlotry, God put Hosea in the place where he feels what God feels, and it doesn't feel good to me. So what are some key takeaways? Love is relentless. Did you feel that in the story? The shooter to the red light district, water back. Sin has consequences. How many of you have taught your children growing up? Choices have consequences. I knew that message had stuck when I heard our son Les say to his brother-in-law once, choices have consequences. Yes. He finally gets it. Choices have consequences. Inevitably, idolatry of any form, and we talked about many modern day examples, disobedience leads to discipline. Redemption is possible. Hosea's act going into the red light district and buying her back mirrors God's grace to us. God's covenant is unbreakable. So in this text, he says, I made a promise to you. I promised him. That's the transactional promise of Abraham, Arthur. If you keep my commandments, if you remain in a faith relationship with me, then here's what you get. That's a transactional relationship. But here, I think in the story of Hosea and Gomer, the way that God feels about us is creation, and our creator. is very much a relationship. It's not a transactional. So God's covenant, even from Abraham to who's next? People, and then Joshua reiterated when they entered Canaan. We studied that just a few weeks back. The desire was continuous on God's part. It never changed. I want to have a covenant relationship with you that looks like a marriage. Be your husband, you be my wife. We'll have this intimate relationship with each other. And prophetic symbolism is powerful. So somebody made the comment, Greg, you were saying all the prophets had the same message. Come back, come back, come back. What makes Hosea's message particularly poignant is the casting it in the context of a literal husband and wife relationship.
The other takeaway is that we are common as individuals and born.
Right. Good. So the pagan gods of their time said, let's see, I'll just read it rather than try to paraphrase it. Which one of the pagan gods of the nations ever wanted the love of their followers? Which of them ever asked, do you love me? False gods don't want our love. They want our fear, our obedience, and our slave-like sacrifice and devotion. The search for more money, the search for a better career, the search for a bigger home, the search for a better car, all those things. But the true God, the living God, isn't satisfied with just our fear, our obedience, or even our slave-like sacrifice and devotion. He wants our love freely given and enjoyed in a relationship with him. If we miss this, we miss the heart of God's work in us and for us. And finally, this is from the introduction to this book. I've mentioned it before, and if you're interested in getting it, I have the link up here. God is not the kind of person his enemies have made him out to be: arbitrary, unforgiving, and severe. God is just as loving and trustworthy as his Son, just as willing to forgive and heal. Though infinite in majesty and power, our Creator is an equally gracious person who values nothing higher than the freedom, dignity, and individuality of his intelligent creatures, that their love, their faith, their willingness to listen and obey may be freely given. He even prefers to regard us not as servants, but as friends. This makes reference to John 15:15 in the upper room when Jesus said to his disciples, I no longer consider you my friend, my servants. Consider you my friends. What God has revealed to me, I reveal to you because you are my friends. And yet, Graham Maxwell actually wrote an entire book with that title. It's not servants, but friends. This is the truth revealed through all 66 books of Scripture. This is the everlasting good news that wins the trust and admiration of God's loyal children throughout the universe. Anybody with a final thought? Please.
How faithful he was to God, but not questioning.
Their standards, moral standards was so different. So cool.
Thanks. Anyone? Harry.
Elmer said something a bit ago that I've been rolling over, and that was, how does it feel when
It has that effect on me sometimes too.
Well, I'm sorry. How did Hosea feel when he was at the door of the pimp? I wouldn't have. Maybe had 38 under his belt. Hosea,
long sword.
And the point there is, how does God feel toward child traffickers today? I mean, to me, they're just despicable. They're the worst of the worst. But Jesus dealt with spiritual pimps in his day. They were called scribes and Pharisees.
Sure did.
He finally unloaded on them, so you're just dirt. But he still left the door open, even wept over them. Come to me. That's a kind of forgiveness and love that's difficult to emulate.
Absolutely. And if you've seen the visual Bible, the version of that story in John,
Pardon?
That story, on the steps of the temple, where they call them whitewashed sepulchres and snakes and vipers.
House is left on you.
When you see the movie version of that, not the movie version, the version where the script of the movie is literally the text of John, the pathos on the actor's face as he says those words, "You're snakes, you're vipers," but he doesn't hiss out the words, "You're snakes and you're vipers." Why won't you come back to me? All I want is a relationship with you based on love and faith. Yeah, powerful metaphor. Anything else? Well, have a great day, great Sabbath, and come back next week. And Kelly's gets the chance to do all the poetry verses.